see my screen, by the way? So
yes,
thank you,
I can.
everyone. All right, there you go. Thank you, everyone, for attending this session for our fifth session of Salesforce MVP series. So for today, we'll be having Carlos Siquera. He'll be talking about DevOps. So just a quick introduction. So we don't have Bill Buen today, my co-leader, but for me, I'm Joey Chan, the founder and principal consultant and technical architect for Cloud Jedi Solutions. Currently, the group leader for the Trailblazer community and currently rated #1 in the App Exchange. I've been working with Salesforce for the past 12 years now. So, and then I'll let you take care of it. So you can go ahead and share.
Okay, can I share now?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, hold on. Let me see if how can I share this.
Yes,
so please,
we can see it now.
Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, let me do just my sharing my windows here. Okay, so thanks everybody, for attending the event today. Thanks for inviting me. And the topic today that we want to talk is DevOps for Salesforce. My name is Carlos Siquera. A brief intro here with who I am. I'm a 4-time Salesforce MVP. I'm a technical evangelist with the company Copado with an ISV that does DevOps. And a little information about what I have done. I've been doing, I'm 7 times certified. I'm also certified instructor, lightning champion. I have been speaking at the Dreamforce events. Have 20+ years experience in Brazil, where I come from, and in USA. And I'm very focused on DevOps, evangelism, and so forth. I'm fluent in Portuguese, of course, it's my native language. English and Spanish, and I have traveled a lot around the world, doing not just Salesforce. I've been doing Salesforce for 4 years, but prior to that, I was doing mainframes work. And at the bottom is my Twitter, aka Carioca. I really like to connect with people. So with that said, let's start it. And basically, I'm going to give an introduction about the DevOps. This is not a sales pitch. It is about what is DevOps, how DevOps affects the Salesforce environment. And at the end, we can have a Q&A session. Is that okay, Joy? Joy?
That's good. Yeah.
Okay. So what's the agenda? Why DevOps for Salesforce? Steps to reducing Salesforce time to value in Q&A. This was a survey that we had, with Salesforce last year. So CIOs are being measured on whether their company's workforce is fully productive while working remotely, and if the company is able to serve its customers entirely digitally. So this is what you see here on the right, the benefits, then with people, what they found out by using DevOps, by adopting, a mentality, a methodology of doing DevOps. This is a big picture here. What you see here on the side is how you increase productivity, by using Salesforce. Salesforce is a multi-tenant, right? A lot of resource in there. Is a CRM suite, and it's low code or zero code. That's how you improve productivity. How do you reduce your costs? Well, it's because it's on the cloud. There's nothing physical. There's not on the premises. It's scalable. Today you need such amount of resource. Tomorrow you need more. You can spend and so forth. And it is secure. Okay. So these are pretty much how the Salesforce is proposing what everybody talks about, the digital transformation, right? This is all the offerings that Salesforce has in there. This is what we call in today the Salesforce 360. Everything that's surrounding intelligent customer 360 here. And unfortunately, we came with the COVID, and COVID has been a catalyst for change across the globe, with experts claiming that it is for every company. I'm not going to say that COVID was a blessing, was never a blessing, but it makes things change. The new normal. Before, you probably had to do, if you had 6 months to do implementation, because of COVID, that time had to be cut sometimes in half or even into a third of that. So the speed to do development, implementation, and accurate tests to put things in production has improved, it has become a necessity. That's why the reason for DevOps. So what we see here is pretty much, as a DevOps professional, you must understand the challenges that you are facing on the Salesforce platform today and in the future. We know that the Salesforce platform as extended solutions don't provide DevOps needs to operate at scale. We call this the go-live gap. These go-live gaps are the fundamentals for any DevOps operation and what you as a DevOps professional needs to resolve. So pretty much here is the reality. We have large teams with the multiple siloed teams, people working all over. Even before remote work was a thing, we didn't have a structure, teams working there. The development tools were not integrated. You had a data silos, you have a multiple scheduler, no single source of truth. So this is, from this side in here, this is what you're coming from Salesforce. You want to get in here, you want to find the business viability. So the uncertainty was COVID hit us. That creates a social unrest. People stress out, people have uncertainty. Where they're gonna work is hard for them to concentrate on the work. Some people had to start to do remote works in parts of the world that they didn't have the proper infrastructure. Volatility of the economy and this disruptions globally that's happened all over the world because panic of people and companies. So the middle here is what we find here is what Salesforce does not provide. By using out-of-the-box Salesforce, you don't have a structured CI/CD process. Okay, you don't have a story-driven development. We don't have a version control. We don't have a security and compliance. We don't have performance analysis. We don't have a disaster recovery like a rollback. Okay, so pretty much this is where DevOps, that's the gap here in that DevOps, we find it on the Salesforce platform, and then that's what you as a DevOps professional, you don't even need to be a DevOps professional as long as you work with the Salesforce in any capacity as an admin or a developer. You need to think about these things here sooner or later. Okay, so this is by Mark Benioff. We are facing a true unprecedented situation. So it was a time that DevOps is not a new thing. DevOps concept has been around for many, many years. I mean, I spoke about DevOps way back in the 90s when I was working a mainframe, but now more than ever, it is a necessity to have a DevOps approach, for your company. So let's see the next here. Now, how can you increase, Salesforce ROI, return of investment, by 50% by enabling DevOps? Okay, so what you need here, you need an engine that enables for DevOps teams to innovate at pace with a true CI/CD pipeline without compromising on security and compliance on every deliverable. You also need the governance framework to the DevOps team with a clear development and deployment process, enabling the team to be unified and operate with the same goals here. With the proper governance framework, you get total visibility into every user story, every test case, every deployment, every release, every failure, every compliance violation on every DevOps team's member. So you pretty much have a whole picture of who is doing what Okay, and then there's a couple of slides here that I'm going to show later how it's important to have a collaborative environment here. So in this case, what we see here is you plan your changes, right? So then you build, you deliver, and you monitor. That's why the logo here is pretty much an infinite loop, because you never really ended anything. As soon as you monitor, as soon as you deliver this, you implement something in production, you have to continuously monitor. So to make sure that that is still doing what's supposed to do until a user Sam comes and say, hey, I need to change something. So then the cycle starts all over here. Okay. So applying a DevOps delivery strategy that enables you to operate Salesforce even faster with more trust and more quality. That's ultimately what you're looking for. Salesforce is extremely powerful platform, but if you don't apply a disciplined delivery process that automates how you plan, create, test, deploy, release, and monitor all of the information your team builds on the platform, you are simply not maximize your Salesforce investment. If you're falling behind, you are in good company. Only 10% of the CIO says that they are successfully able to develop and deploy software as the real-time pace that requires to compete in today's digital economy. As I said before COVID, you probably, the normal was to have each company has their, how often they would do implementations, they would do deliveries, right? It could be every month, every quarter, every 6 months. With COVID, a lot of companies, they had to let go people, so the teams got reduced. And the same way, if you have like a 10 employees and now you have a 6 or 7, you have less people to do the work, but you have even more work to do. So if you don't implement a DevOps philosophy in there to have everybody working together as a team, you would be in a very, very, very bad shape. Okay. So now, the big catch about DevOps and Salesforce is that Salesforce platform is absolutely unique. It's unlike any other platform out there where the cloud-based, whether it's a cloud-based or on-premise. The list of challenges that hold back Salesforce teams from applying DevOps delivery process to the platform is specific to the way the Salesforce is architected. Salesforce never really built a structured release process into the platform to coordinate and manage large teams of developers and admins. We never built a source repository into the platform, so there's no source-based development where teams can work together and be able to collaborate, and their work is to master the CI/CD pipeline. So if you work with Salesforce, plain Salesforce, you don't have a version control. You don't get to use Git. You can, if you're a developer, you decide to do things outside Salesforce, but it doesn't come out of the box. That's something that you have to go in there and create yourself. So there was not a concept of version control. Teams face major challenges in terms of keeping sandbox, scratch orgs, and environments in sync. This creates major conflicts as the entire development team, whether it's the admins, developers, or enterprise architects, are not able to collaborate and are forced to step over each other when they are checking multiple code lines or making declarative changes. So as I said before, have to plan, build, deliver, and monitor. The plan here is when you start to create your things, but the build, you can have more than one professional pretty much working exactly on the same thing. You say, oh, I need to change an object, or I need to change a dashboard. If you don't have a version control, if you don't have individual sandbox for each professional, you will have the risk, and happen often, that that two people are working exactly on the same piece of artifact, of metadata. So you overriding each other, and that's a mess to keep up. So Salesforce, unfortunately, it does not offer that yet. Okay, Due to its metadata-driven architecture, it's very challenging to integrate Salesforce platform with general-purpose third-party DevOps tools, resulting in compliance, security, and governance issues. All of this is what we call the go-to-live gap. It is what ultimately is inhibits your ability to operate Salesforce at scale with much faster velocity and the increased trust needed to keep up in today's marketplace. So it's going back, you know, as I said here, this is go live gap here. This is pretty much is what make your life, you know, more complicated, because all of these things in the middle, they do not exist on the Salesforce environment. We're talking about Salesforce, but DevOps is general. You can have this in any other environment. You can have that used if you work into Oracle, into Microsoft, SAP, any other platform or mainframe. You will have a lot of these things that you see here in the middle. You face exactly the same problems in there. Any questions here so far? Any comments?
So far, so good.
Okay, so what's the approach here is to the data-driven, you know, how we measure the success of your Salesforce development. So basically, the 4 measure steps that we assume that we consider for DevOps is lead time for change, deployment frequency, change failure rate, and mean time to recover. So pretty much, so these are the 4 measures of delivery performance that are in the industry standards. These 4 metrics are referenced in the book Accelerate, Create, and also Andrew Davis' book, Mastering Salesforce DevOps. There's 2 books here that we highly recommend. Of course, Mastering the Salesforce DevOps is by Andrew Davis. You know, he's very much well-known on the DevOps world. I highly recommend anybody that has a chance to get the book. It's very specific to DevOps. So what we'll see here is that we have a group of these 2 categories: innovation velocity, like how fast, okay, and reliability and trust, meaning the stability. So first we start with the lead time for change, which is the time from when the code gets committed to the time that the code actually gets into the hands of your end users. So this is pretty much the lead time is the time that your users say, hey, I need a new report or dashboard, whatever the user has asked. So the lead time, it counts from the time that is not the time that you start to write or develop that. No, that's the time that this thing is ready on your Lauer environment sandbox, from the time that that's in there until the time that is deployed in production. So this is the lead time, okay? It's time from code committed to production. Shorter is better. Faster feedback cycles and adjust to the market. So how you understand this? Shorter is better is how fast you can do it. If you have a requirement on Monday morning, Tuesday, you have the code ready. By Wednesday or Thursday, you have this implemented in production. This is better. This is the lead time. Okay, the shorter is better. The next one is how the frequency of release, meaning whether you are able to release hourly, daily, or perhaps even monthly. The higher is better. The normal in companies is to do deliveries in production every few months, or at least once a month or something like this. Well, you know, if you can, with the DevOps, with a proper DevOps, you start to do your deployments faster. Not just faster, but more frequent. If you're going from doing once a month to doing every weekend, that's faster. If you can do it by the hour, that's faster. If you can do by the minute, that's even better. Bigger corporations like Facebook, Google, and so forth, they are in a very competitive market. So their deployments, the frequency for them is very high. Okay, they cannot afford to wait until the weekend when people are off and home. They have to do this on a daily basis by the hour. Okay, so the next one that we talk about here is change failure rate, which simply says what are the percentage of your releases that require a rollback or fix. This percentage really ties everything together. It's important that if you go twice as fast, that you are twice as stable as well. So this is a sequence here. Now you're saying, hey, my lead time here, is shorter. I can get things in production very fast. I can do my deployments very often. Instead to do once a month, I can do every day. But what if everything here is nice and dandy, but when you implement something here, like on a Friday, or even let's say that today is Thursday, you implement this and you immediately find out that you have a problem. So this change failure rate here, the less is the rate, is the better. What that means, how long it takes until you put something in production, you realize that there's a problem in there, and you can roll back to whatever it was before, so that the business can continue while you're trying to fix this, okay? And last but not least is mean time to recover, okay? Again, this is the shorter is the better. You found out here that you implement something in production, and right away you realize that there's a problem. You do a rollback for the time for the environment that was before, and you're going to work on that problem to find out what's the problem. So the business continues here the way that they were before you implemented something. Now, how fast can you fix this problem here? So these are the 4 metrics that you should always keep in mind when you're talking about DevOps. So we have done a lot of analysis with our customers over the years, talking to Salesforce as well, to help identify the top performance factors that affect your Salesforce delivery success, including the size and makeup of your delivery team, the number of users, the number of production orgs, the amount of customization, of course, what sets of developed tools are you using to automate your process. So if you don't have anything, if you don't have any tools today, you're pretty much just doing change sets, you are way behind. You are way behind because there's no automation, there's no quality gates, there's no merge conflict, resolution. There's no monitoring of performance wise. How's your teams working? And who's falling behind, and so forth. Talking about productivity. Let me get the next one here is you have to align your people to plan, build, and deliver the agile digital experience. Okay, so teamwork is at the heart of driving performance. For your DevOps teams, will build the future of your company. We do that by unifying your delivery team, including your admins, developers, architects, your security team, and even the CIO and IT departments around a complete native DevOps platform built specifically for Salesforce. So this is without DevOps, this is how you have people pretty much working independently. You can see here that's real mass. The admin does one thing, but the developer does something else. There's no trust. You lose work. You see here pretty much the teams here doing different things without an accord, without balance, without cooperation, collaboration here. So when you start to implement DevOps methodologies in your team, everybody knows what they are doing. Everybody knows the goals. There's a collaboration. There's a trust. People feel comfortable about because they are working together, so they can expect what their colleagues is going to do. So that's pretty much when you make a determination to adopt DevOps, you pretty much involve everybody that you can hear. So, so as I mentioned, all the personas that you have in there. And of course, large organizations contain dozens of Salesforce teams, multiply inefficiency. So the bigger your organization, more problems, more people to manage. You might have 2, 3 different production orgs. You might have people scattered all over the world. Even before COVID, you could have people in the United States, Canada, Europe, in South America. So it's mandatory that you have a DevOps methodology in there so that you can keep people accountable for. And of course, by doing all of these things here, you're gonna meet, the needs of your business users and of course your customers and partners. Because when you talk customers, partners, they can be people inside your company, right? And it can be your clients as well. If your product, if your company is selling goods, the faster you have your implementations, the better to make your business internal users happier and your outside customers happier as well. So how you standardize this? You plan pretty much using user stories, or any agile concept, to manage your metadata. Then you build, okay, with either no code or low code. So complex codes, can be packaged and maintained standards doing a quality gates. Quality gates is pretty much the tasks that you make sure that you are moving components from your lower environment to the next one, like integration, UAT, and finally production. You are making sure that you are doing good tests in there. If it's a Apex, it's a programmatic ones, you got to do your proper coverage tests, right? Coverage for Apex, Lightning, web components, so forth. And if they are declarative ones, you still got to do your tests in there, make sure that that report shows the data that you want. Make sure that your dashboard shows what you want, making sure that a flow or a process build or a validation rule or whatever in there is properly tested. Okay, so this is the build here. Okay, so the next we have the deliver. Okay, and after deliver, as I mentioned it before, you have the monitoring here, pretty much making sure that things are getting production on time, that your end users are happy, and if in case something goes wrong, you have the rollback here. You got to make sure that the managing here, making sure that you're under compliance, meaning a lot of companies, they have a very straight, very strong compliance requirements. Like in Europe, you have a GDPR. In the United States, you have a HIPAA. In Brazil, you have the LGPR. That's a very strong as well. So all of this is parts of managing properly, using DevOps concepts here. Okay. So the journey to DevOps is pretty much, you can go from 1, or some people even say 0, to the maturity level number 5. Okay. So at the level number 1, you pretty much just use Salesforce here. You select employee, you pretty much use a change set. Okay. When you reach version, when you start to use a version control, is that when you start to use a single source of truth, like Git repositories, any one of them, GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket, Azure DevOps, you name it. Okay. The third level of maturity is when you start to do agile releases. Okay. You can use user stories, for collaboration among your teams. The fourth one is continuous delivery. Pretty much saying continuous delivery is of change to production to get faster time to value. So when you can start to have this in an automated way. And the fifth one is a continuous innovation, is when you can pretty much get inside of every part of your delivery process and target improvements. When you get up in here, it's pretty much you doing things almost automatically without a human intervention. Meaning, if you deploy something from your sandbox to your integration or UAT, you can have mechanisms in there that provides you your CI and CD. What's CI? CI is pretty much in here. Continuous integration is when you have all your sandboxes. So if you have like a 10 developers, that means each one has his or her sandbox. And every time that you do a code here on a daily basis, probably like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, you get all that synchronized. Okay, all the sandbox synchronized, almost like a sandbox refresh that you do with the Salesforce. But when you do a sandbox refresh, you wipe out everything. In a proper DevOps, you should be able to do that granular. So if we have like a 10 sandbox, I have my sandbox and Joey has his sandbox. I just create a new code and test it and move to the next environment. At the end of the day, your DevOps environment should be able to take my code and copy that to Joey so that all the lower environments, they are in sync. That's the continuous integration, okay? The part of continuous delivery is when you can have, you start to have automations, meaning every time that something gets to UAT is the sandbox right before production, you can establish quality gates in there to make sure that your code is correct, to make sure your metadata is correct. So you can set up, you know, behaviors for this continuous delivery that you don't need to stop your system. You don't need the human being to go in there and press a button and say, hey, move this, implement this from UAT to production. No, this continuous delivery is pretty much automation here behind the scenes, okay? Now, question for the people. Where you folks think you are here in terms of DevOps? You know, you can put it on the chatter here or just, let me see here the chatter if you have any talkings here. Can you put it here on the chatter? Where are you in your DevOps? Are you at level 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5? Okay, Joe, you are level
Mostly
2.
number 2.
For
I guess
most
question 2 though, since while we're waiting for others, is there a specific ideal size? Of course, everybody, if possible, should be using DevOps, right? But is there a certain size, or like a guideline that, hey, if we reach more than 3, ideally, we should implement in some form of DevOps already? More than 3 developers or something like that? Is there like a guideline? At what point?
when you say a guideline regarding like the number of people on the team?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Good question. Well, if you have a very small team that's pretty much just one admin, you know, solo admin, and you have like 50, 100 users, I can never say, no, don't use DevOps. DevOps always going to facilitate you, okay? Because let's see here. One of the things that DevOps, the proposition of DevOps is to pretty much to avoid, to help you with the version control, okay? So I give you an example. If it's that just you, Joey, doing this, and you say, well, I don't have another admin, I don't have another developer. So it never happened that I'll be writing code and I'm going to be overriding somebody else's code. That's true. But how you document that? Okay, if you're just using change sets, how you document that? You can write something in Excel or, you know, Word documents or so forth, you know. But in case, you know, with a proper DevOps, I mean, I'm not doing a sales pitch here for Copado because I happen to work for the company, but a DevOps product should be able to give you all of those features in one place. Because if you're not, the way that you have I'm not saying you, Joe, but majority of people, they will have a Salesforce in change sets. Then they have an Excel spreadsheet just to keep track of what they're doing. A DevOps product should be one unique place where everything is in there inside of Salesforce, okay? So the advantage, you know, of DevOps is just not limited. Of course, the bigger your team, the bigger the benefit. So you by yourself, you're not gonna see you're not gonna see all the benefits immediately, okay? But when you start to have after 3 or 5 admins on the same team, then you really need to have it. You know, when you start to have more than 100, 200 users, you will start to have it, because the ratio that we use here in US, I don't know about the rest of the world, is that for every 300 users, you should have 1 admin, okay? So if you have 1,000 users, you probably should have at least 3 admins. But then it's not just admin, you need developers as well. So when your team is around at least 5 people, it's mandatory that you have a DevOps implemented in there.
Right.
Make
So
sense?
whenever we're talking about DevOps, we're not just focusing on the code, right? We're also talking about configuration changes, meaning
Yeah.
all of the addition of fields, workflow rules, process builders. I mean, as a best practice, we should be doing that from the sandbox, right? And then basically part of it is integrating it with.
Exactly. So the admin, a lot of people say, well, at the end of the day, an admin is a developer as well, because the misconception is developers is people that write code, right? Apex and stuff. Okay, I buy that. I agree with that. But they are programmatic developers. Well, you as an admin, if you create a flow, guess what? That's some programming there, right? That's a point and click, but you still need to use logic. You still need to use decision trees in there, right? If you're doing a process builder that involves logics, if you're creating a very complex validation rule or a formula field that is the same, you are a developer as well. The difference is one is a point and click developer. So the admins, they will be doing that, creating objects, reports, all of those artifacts. But then you need to maintain that. You need to control in a proper way how where you create them and when you move them for one sandbox to the next one, going left to right until you have your pipeline until you go all the way to production. So regardless, if you have 5 people in your team, or if you have only 1, you will still have, enjoy the benefits of a proper DevOps environment.
Cool.
Okay. Ray, he's asked, may I ask, can I also use this for the other programming languages or tools? Well, DevOps is universal, okay? We are talking here about Salesforce, okay? So if I'm talking about the product, Copado is specific for Salesforce, okay? I don't know any product out there that manages several platforms. So if you're doing DevOps for Salesforce, yes, Copado is the one to use. If you're using one for Microsoft, there will be another product. If you're using that for Oracle, it will be another one. I don't know any product in the market, okay, that's 100% DevOps for several platforms in there. Make sense? Good. Cool. So let me see the next slide here. Where I was here. So pretty much I got only Joey to say that was number 2. So anybody else is in the number 1, 2?
Based on what I've seen, based on the people that I know, a lot of them are actually either 1 or 2 though. I'm not sure if it's somewhat biased because we mostly work with SMEs. So meaning, I'm guessing most of the larger ones should actually have this in place already, right? But for SMEs, a lot of it's, of course, justifying the cost of the tools too, right? And basically, there's usually just one developer or 2 developers. It really depends on their budget too, right?
Well, budget is something, but that that's not a luxury, because what happened here is if you have one DevOps product, okay, best practices, you might say, oh, that incurs a cost. Yes, there's nothing free in life. There's a cost. But then if you try to cut it, you try to save money here because, oh no, I'm not going to have a DevOps something here. You know what? That's going to cost you in the long run, because the best time to get a DevOps is any time that you can afford. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, you're a greenfield company. If you today you brand new with Salesforce and immediately you start to implement a DevOps methodology, guess what? Mm-hmm. You're ready to scale. You might have a 5 admins today with 1,000 users. If your company grows, and every company grows, the day that you have like a 2,000, 3,000 users, well, DevOps is going to be in there to help you out. Okay. So now, if you're already a mature company that you have Salesforce for 5 years, and you have a nightmare because you have like a 10,000 users, you know, your team is like 40 people in there, different squads, that is a mess. And people say, Carlos, I was talking to a prospect in Latin America. Their sandbox UAT has not been refreshed since 2018. Can you imagine that? That's a nightmare. That is a nightmare. So if you try to cut costs, you say, hey, oh, I'm not gonna buy a DevOps one solution for DevOps, you're gonna continue to do some change sets. Then you're gonna start to do several things separated. You know, what is easier for you to buy a car, right? You get a car, you get the wheels, you have the engine, you have the seats, you have the steering wheel, or you go in there and buy different parts to build a car. You see what I'm saying? If you buy the car, you pay one price altogether because a car is made it in a massive production. The cost to build gets cheaper. Now, if you go in there and buy just the wheels, you have one cost. Then if you buy the body, is something else. If you buy the steering wheel, the engines, and so forth. So that's the thing here about DevOps. You should invest and get a DevOps tool instead of keep using different things. Because if you don't have a DevOps tool, what do you have? You have your change sets. Okay. Then how you keep track of what is doing? Well, you don't have a Git. So how you keep tracking there? In an Excel spreadsheet, in a Word document, say, hey, Joey, you create this report, and you know, we are humans, we make mistakes, right? So how do you compare versionings in there? You know, all of a sudden, how you compare compliance? You might have your company very strong about compliance. Who gave access to such a record that has medical information? How you keep tracking that? You're not gonna say, oh, I use Salesforce audit trail, because that's just not enough. What if you need to do rollbacks? You know, something happened and you say, you know what? I need the image of a month ago. You cannot do that, you know, with the plain Salesforce. So you might sound like, hey, a cost for DevOps, you know, is an investment, but the savings that you make it because you have a faster deliveries and more often is much better. Make sense?
Yep, it says. I mean, probably, I'm not sure, you might also have some resources that we can share to the rest of the group with regards to justifying it to the management that, hey, we actually need DevOps, right? You might have something like that already, right?
Yeah, let me see here. Well, before I get to the question time, let me put here on the chatter, okay? No, we're good here. We're good here.
Okay.
Any questions? I mean, because that's the question time here. Anything here that got confused? I mean, we still have time, and I'm here pretty much to try to address any questions that you folks might have.
In terms of getting started, I guess, once we have a tool that we use for DevOps, basically, do you have any specific recommendations in terms of adoption? Of course, that's usually the challenging part, right? I mean, it's easy to buy the product, and it's also another to tell everyone to use it properly, right? How's your experience in terms of adoptions for the different companies that you've worked with in terms of DevOps?
Well, people feel good about it because, I mean, for everybody that ever worked with Salesforce, deployments is always like, oh my God, because people always do deployments over weekends. People feel afraid of them. They say, oh man, this is a nightmare. So immediately you start to get people more comfortable because they know that they can pretty much see it. So let me see here. Give me a second here. Let me see if I can just give you a glimpse. Is that okay if I show you just a screen of what's Copado? This event here is not specific about Copado, it's about DevOps, but generally speaking, I think I can just
show. We have time.
Give me a second here. Okay, when we have this, let me present here. This is pretty much, I'm talking about Copado, but when you talk about DevOps, it's pretty much you have all your sandbox or scratch orgs here on the left, okay? And, ideally, you would have, this would be for the release management in an agile, proper agile, and have a quality. So you gotta have a Git behind, so that's where you keep all your code. Nothing ever, is stored in Salesforce. Okay, so the user historic centric model, this is pretty much like the pipeline would work. Okay, when you're talking about traditional change sets, you create a huge change sets here with like a 20, 30, anything in there, metadata. When you talk with a DevOps product, you would pretty much create smaller portions like user stories, so you break down in small pieces. It's easier to manage that, The other thing that is important here is to isolate, this is here in blue, this is Salesforce. This is what should be done in the background using Git as your Git repository. So pretty much, since Salesforce does not provide this, a decent DevOps product should have pretty much integration with the Git where you keep all your metadata. Okay, so you don't store any of your metadata here. So you are in an environment in a sandbox called Dev1. You create all your changes in here. This is saved into the Git repository. So when you are ready to deploy this to the next environment, your product should create a package XML here, okay, do all the management of the branches here, and then push this to another environment, okay? So basically, when we talk about this is give you an idea here, okay? So this is pretty much a good example how an environment would work. You have all your developers here or admins here, Scratch or sandbox. We have a velocity sandbox. We have a scratch org here. And this is what I mentioned before called CI, continuous integration, meaning I change something here. At the end of the day, I push to integration, okay? Later in the night, you have an automation here. You have a job that push my change that I just moved in here. It pushes that back to everybody else. So any given day, everybody is in sync, okay? Then after integration, you push that UAT, and after UAT, you have in production. So this portion here, this side here, this is called continuous integration, meaning we collaborate. I did something here in my sandbox, I push to integration go push to your sandbox here, to everybody else. so that everybody is in sync. Okay, this is continuous integration. Continuous deployment is the ability to make that every time that when you get it in UAT, which is the last environment before production, when you move things from integration to UAT, you have your proper tests and pretty much you get this thing pushed to production automatically instead of you going there and having to do this manually. You know what I mean?
Yep. It's good.
So yeah, and there's a lot of stuff that we can talk, that I can show you here. I mean, this is what we call the user story. You know, I can come here and every time that I save something, you know, on my Git, I can come here and see that information in Git. So pretty much is in there. You don't need to understand Git, but it's in there. You know, the other things that happen when you talk overlap awareness, you don't have this in plain Salesforce. This is telling me here that I have a conflict. Okay, so what this is telling me, that I have a user story where I have this Apex class here, but the same Apex class here is used in another user story. You see here that's a potential conflict. I can go and do a pull request, and you know, you pretty much see here, you can compare your code and my code and make a decision what exactly you wanted to save it in your Git repository. You know, so pretty much, you know, these are the things, I mean, Copado does that, but these are the things that a proper DevOps product should do it.
Yep.
Make sense?
Got it. Any other questions?
I want to something here for the folks. Let me see if I get it here. Give me a second here, please. Okay. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so Joey, I'm gonna stop sharing here because I have a surprise for you folks. Can you share your screen?
Me? All right, hold on.
Yeah.
Can you see it?
Yes. So now what you need to do is I'm gonna type in here on the chat what you need to go, and everybody else can go in there as well. And we're gonna do this together.
What is it? Success.copado.com, is that right?
Yes.
All right, let me share. Do you need me to go anywhere?
Let me see if you get in there. Now you need to create an account. Everybody can do the same. This is really quick here.
I know.
Looks like I already have an account.
Got it?
Yeah, hold on. Yep, I mean.
Got it?
Yeah.
Okay, so now can you magnify, can you magnify your screen because I can barely see it. Okay, so
Yeah.
now, okay, so now go in there where it says helping and training.
Yeah.
Now Academy, go to Academy. Okay, so now, okay, you see in there, administrator certification trail for 200 euros. Click in there, add to the cart. Right there.
That's fine. Is that right?
Yeah, now add to the cart. Go to the cart. Okay, now I just put it on the chatter. I just put a coupon in there. See if you can see in the chatter.
Yep. You can see it.
Okay, put in there.
That's fine. Cool. And then
Check
check
out.
out.
Okay, so everybody that gets that gets a free certification for courtesy of Copado.
Cool.
Oh, thank you.
Is that
Appreciate
good?
it, Carlos. Great. Yeah, thank you. We're now getting responses there.
Yeah, so do that right now, okay? Because this code is valid just for today and tomorrow, okay? And now the thing is, the code for it to register is valid just for today and tomorrow. Now the certification trail, you can do that anytime, okay? This pretty much, you know, it's about like 6 hours. You know, you can take your time. You can do it like 1 hour a day. It's 6 modules. It really talk about DevOps. And now that you're on this Copado Academy, you can learn a lot about DevOps, even if you don't work with Copado. You know, you would do that. The only thing that I ask is that the code that I just released, okay, is only valid for 30 people. So please do not share this outside of this video. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So now when you go in there, you can start to doing that event in there. You know what I mean?
Yep. Sounds good. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, and I mean, if it's anything else,
it's a great gift for everyone here.
Yeah, so I hope you guys enjoy it. Let me try to share my screen here again. Can I share? Can I share a screen again?
Yes, go ahead. Can you share it now?
Oh, that's pretty much my thank you, everybody. If I didn't answer any of your questions, I mean, it was an honor for me. We still have time. You know, as far as I'm concerned, I'm free here. If anybody has a question, it's up to you, Joey. But you know, I'm gonna stop sharing here again because I just want to say thank you for the opportunity. But if anybody has any question, you know, let me know. As I put in there my Twitter, my LinkedIn, and please, you know, regardless if we're talking Copado or not, make sure that you learn about DevOps, make sure that you get involved on the Ohana. And as a Salesforce MVP and a technical evangelist for Copado, it's really a privilege for me to be here. Make sense?
Thank you again, Carlos. Looks like we're good. And then let me stop sharing now. Recording.
Okay, well, you know,